Welcome to Don't Everybody Leave. Say howdy to Mac King.
Howdy. I am Mac King. Welcome to Don't Everybody Leave. And I'm here with all my pals. We got a great show. We have John Carney. Oh, there's the Tuffy. He says Tuffy. And Vinny, Jax, Nick Diffatte, and Michael Goudeau. I can't wait. I assume that means you want to hear the Tuffy story.
I do want to hear the Tuffy story.
I do want to hear this Tuffy story because we got John Carney. And one of the greatest sleight of hand magicians of our generation, and I'm excited to talk to him. And also one of the funniest people I know, and one of my favorite friends. I'm excited he's here. Normally, I believe we have been starting these shows with people who died since we last got together, and nobody that we know or have any connection to has died since our last get together.
A half hour ago.
And that's a record.
That is a record.
Yeah. Isn't that disappointing?
It is. Well, in a way, yeah, it is disappointing. But Jacob, you intimated, is that the right word? You intimated.
I think it's intubated, right? Like with a tube is how I
yeah, oh, you intubated.
Yeah, I have I have a video to show of a dead guy. He didn't die recently, but I have something for our segment. I love this. Please watch it. There's the graphic. Look at that. I love this. Please watch it. I'm not going to say too much about I'll say who it is before we show it. This is a video of Sammy Davis Jr., who many people know. Yeah, because it's me. It's many people know as a member of the Rat Pack and a singer, and maybe as a tap dancer, but unless you've spent time really researching Sammy, you don't know all the things you could do. And I think if I asked you to guess 10 things that Sammy could do, you might not guess that this is on the list.
Is this from the Rifleman?
Perception?
Well, we'll talk about it afterwards. So
Perception.
Vinny, you're not supposed to say the funniest thing of the whole show in the first 2 minutes of the show.
Wow.
Okay, this is from old talk show. This is probably the late 50s that this was on. You can roll the clip whenever you want, Nikki.
As I walked out in the streets of Laredo, as I walked out in Laredo one day, I spied a young cowboy wrapped up in white rain. Shucks, I wouldn't put it on unless I was good at it. You see, single action means like, unless you have the modern revolver, they can fire this way by just pressing the trigger. With the old-fashioned Western gun, you had to cock the gun first and then fire. So that, in essence, when you go for the fast draw, the gun is actually cocked while it's in the holster, like so. See, it's cocked here. You pull out and then fire. Of course, you must be careful that when you do this, you don't do that. Or you'll find out immediately why Chester walks with a limp.
All right, there you go. That was a pretty good guess, Mac.
Yeah. I've never seen that clip, but I have seen him on The Rifleman. That was my favorite show when I was a kid, and he did some gun spinning on that show.
So, yeah, he was on a few shows like that. He was on Lawman, Rifleman. I think he was on Wild Wild West. He guested on a few of those. I just love that. I love that he wrote jokes for gun twirling, like a real variety act. And he was trained by, and I'm going to try not to butcher the pronunciation of the Hollywood stuntman at the time, Arvo Oyala, who also trained James Garner and Paul Newman, people like that, to do gun stuff. And apparently there were a group of guys in Hollywood who got really into it and would have quick draw competitions. And apparently the top two guys at quick draw in Hollywood were Sammy Davis Jr. and Jerry Lewis.
Wow.
Yeah, apparently, and you can. Someone should probably tell me this isn't true, but I hope it's true. Apparently, they had a competition, the two of them, at Knott's Berry Farm once, and Jerry won by about a quarter of a second. Timing but I also wanted to show it because we have a former military guy who's been through basic training with actual guns, Jason, and we have a guy, Michael Goudeau, who has, I believe, also done the gun twirling.
I've done
and
gun
so
twirling,
what I want to know is, do they teach it in basic training? And my second question is, why not?
They don't teach it in basic training anymore, but you should look up a guy named Bob London, who he passed away several years ago. But Bob London was the fastest quick draw artist. People may have beaten his time now, but he was a guy that could, clear a gun from the holster and shoot 6 things or whatever in, it's just some preposterously short amount of time. Under a second, he could fire off 6 shots and hit his targets. Just really incredible. Sort of the Steve Forty of quick draw, if you will. I mean, nobody could compete with this guy. And something a lot of people don't know is that in those competitions, they're almost always shooting either wax bullets or they're shooting basically crimped powder. And all they're shooting is powder.
Yeah.
And that's so that, you don't accidentally put one through your foot or whatever if the gun were to go off during the draw, which to those guys doesn't happen that often. But if they're shooting at distance, they're shooting a wax bullet. And if they're shooting up very close, within 10 feet or so, you really don't even have to have a bullet. The unexpended powder will pop the balloons.
I work at a lot of state fairs, oddly enough. And one of the competitions they have is riding and shooting balloons. Ride horses, and you have to shoot the balloons. And again, they're just using blanks to shoot, but the balloons pop because of the residue of the powder. But it's pretty great to watch people riding as fast as they can and shooting. It's a really nice skill.
For the non-magicians that are watching, Steve Forty is the Bob London of card cheating.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I'm a little disappointed you didn't say he's the Mac King of the gun.
Because you've never fired a gun.
Yeah.
I've never even held a real gun, I don't believe.
So when I first came to Vegas, Lance was friends with Joe Condon and knew that I wanted to learn to twirl guns. It took me to introduce me to Joe Condon, and Joe made a pistol for me with a wide trigger for spinning. And it's a 22, little revolver 22, but he drilled out the barrel so that it looks like a 45, really big barrel gun. Made a special holster for me. It's really nice. Really.
Wow.
I think Joe taught Lance how to throw knives too.
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah. He had a lot of those skills. Was one of the early guys I met when I moved to Vegas who showed me a lot of cool stuff like that. Really fun.
Yeah, pretty neat. And that joke is great, or that line. I don't know, hard to call it a joke, but I wouldn't have put it on unless I was good at it.
One of the things I love about that clip is just that, I always loved Sammy, and then the more you get into him, it just gets more and more insane. He sings and dances and plays drums and tap dances and vibraphone and piano and, and gun twirling.
Midwifery.
What?
Midwifery?
I know what that is, but I want you to now say a sentence that explains it.
Yeah, well, I believe Sammy Davis, I was delivered by Sammy Davis Jr. from my mom. Yeah.
Are you saying he caused a lot of babies to be conceived, is what you're saying?
Yeah, well, that could be.
I think it's objectively true. Anyway, that was I love this. Please watch it for this week. So
that was fantastic. That was really great. We could bring out a guest.
That's a good idea.
I think that's a good idea. Man, he's so good. If you haven't seen him as John Carney, you might have seen him as Mr. Misto, or as Foster Ross, is one of his mentors. And a number of years ago, Magic Magazine put out the list of top 10 comedy magicians, and this guy was 2 of them. It's John Carney. You around there, Johnny?
Hey, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. It must be a pleasure to have me there.
Hey, your book's not out yet, right? You got a brand new book about magic?
Yeah, it's at the printer. It's like, I make more money by doing it myself, and I wanted a project. When you perform, you can have a full audience. They can react great. You feel very fulfilled. But when they leave, it's like it never happened. You got nothing to show for it. And I always admired artists that could paint something, put it on the wall, or make an album. And you can hold it in your hand or print a book. So
look over Jacob's shoulder. I don't know who's there today. Oh, I mean, that's just something that, an album is something that people leave behind, like Johnny was saying.
Oh, okay. I was wondering where you were going with that.
Yeah, no, that's all. It was just a little tie-in.
Am I boring already? I've only been on a couple minutes.
Yeah.
All right.
Enough about you, John. Enough about you. There's something new every show. Jacob has some new shit on there.
Oh. But it's great to have something that you made and that you can show for it and actually hold.
I got you.
Packing them all up myself. I don't have a crew like you do. I don't have like an entourage.
Like my crew. These guys.
I want you to know that I prefer the term "yes man."
Where can people get this book of yours once it's available?
CarneyMagic.com. That's it. That's easy. Carney and Magic. If you can remember those two things, you can find it. But it's a stage and close-up. What the only thing that matters to me is what have you done and what have you experienced, and tell me about your experience. So it's about how to create. It's about how to write. It's how to perform, how to polish things, how to make the sleight of hand better. So I'm using all these tricks as an example of how you can do those things. And I go off into a lot of tangents when I'm explaining tricks, but that's it.
Hey, look at that!
Isn't that pretty?
That's just a beautiful book cover, man.
How long do we have to wait to hear that story? I don't know what the story is, but I'm told there's.
Oh, you don't know what? So Jason has his mic muted because but
you don't want to hear him.
We don't want to hear it. But he put up as his name today, Tuffy, to remind, I guess, everybody that you should tell this story about Tuffy, etc.
Well, yeah, I heard John tell the Tuffy story, 10 years ago or so, and it's just fantastic.
It's really David Sandy's story. David Sandy lived in St. Joseph, Missouri, same town as Fawcett Ross. I lived there when I was very young. My parents grew up there. We had relatives there. We went back and forth and visited all the time. That's how I got to know Fawcett.
Just for people who don't know, who was Fawcett Ross and what was he to you?
Fawcett was a professional entertainer, magician in the Midwest. He was from St. Joseph, Missouri. And Fawcett, he was in advertising early on for a newspaper. And I think by his mid-30s, he was a professional for the rest of his life. And when I was probably about 15, I got a book called Early Vernon. And right in the front, I turn and there's a picture of Fawcett Ross, and it says St. Joseph, Missouri. Had his address, 1017 North 19th Street, St. Joseph, Missouri. I can still remember. And I go, St. Joseph, Missouri? Well, what magician lives in St. Joseph, Missouri? I can't believe it. It was like the first long-distance phone call I ever made, and it was it seemed like a long time, but it was only probably about 8 or 10 years before he passed away. But we were very close during that time. He encouraged me, introduced me to a lot of people, and he was just a really sweet guy with a lot of great stories. On to Tuffy. Tuffy was a hellcat. Tuffy didn't like anybody but Fawcett. Tuffy, I'd just be sitting in a chair like this, talking to Fawcett, and from below it was like this. Geez, what's going on? It just hated any intruders in the home. I couldn't pet it. I couldn't get anywhere near it. It'd run away, but he'd hop on Fawcett's lap, and Fawcett just pet it, and he'd be content and everything. So when Fawcett, he was very close to Tuffy, was the name of the cat. Tuffy, good, perfect name for him. And he said Vernon tried to wrangle him a couple times. They had to take him to the vet, and Vernon got all scratched up and everything, trying to put him in a cage, you know. But Fawcett said he wanted to be buried with his cat, and you know that presents some problems. You know, I mean, Fawcett was old. The cat was pretty old. The cat probably wouldn't have lived much longer, and certainly nobody else could have handled it. You know, but Fawcett passed away. And David Sandy, who lived in the same town there, very nice fellow, a good friend of Fawcett's as well. He said, geez, he's going to be buried soon. He wants to be buried with his cat. What am I going to do? I can't kill a cat. How do you strangle it? What do you do? So you had, slap it around or something. So a friend of his said, well, I got a little 22 rifle or just a little rifle or something. He says, I'll take care of it for you. So they both went over to Fawcett's house. Of course, Fawcett's long gone. And David says, I can't watch this. I can't watch you kill the cat. The guy he says, I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. So he goes in and David's out on the porch and he hears pop, pop. Oh, gee. And that guy comes out with a sack. With a cat in it, and they took it to the cemetery, and they had the service, and Fawcett's buried with the cat. And a few days later, somebody calls him up, and he says, "Hey, somebody better take care of Fawcett's cat, Tuffy. It's been running around the house." And he goes, "What? What are you talking about?" It was another cat that had wandered in. And a guy shot a neighborhood cat. And Fawcett was buried with a strange cat.
Oh, man.
And then they had to go back and kill Tuffy, too. So it was like a serial killing.
Didn't Fawcett hate that other cat?
Yeah, I was going to say, I heard also that Fawcett hated that other cat. That's what made it even better, that he's buried with this cat that he hated.
Oh my God! I was sure that he tricked him and didn't shoot a cat and put something else in the sack because no one would shoot a house cat. He shot two house cats.
Yeah. My ex-wife was younger. They had a cat that was sick. They took it to the vet, and it was going to be, several $100s to help the cat out. And the story, she's a kid, and her stepfather, because it's her stepdad, takes the cat carrier with the cat and says, I'm going to go see if I can, go to the, see if the cat's, get the cat help or whatever. And he comes back with just the carrier and a huge blast hole in the back of the carrier. And he's like, cat didn't make it. Get back. That was he freaking shot their cat because the vet bill was going to be too much.
Oh, what's the ticket for animal cruelty cost? Before the show started, we were talking about big cats because a mountain lion just came down into a neighborhood here in Vegas, and I was hoping Goudeau would tell the Lance Burton mountain lion story.
What a delightful intro. Back in the Follies Bergère.
I believe you woke up, Michael.
Yeah. Grandfather. 1986, maybe 87. Whenever Lance came up with that the sword fight. At one point, Lance and I were in the Follies Bergère, and I'm sitting backstage in his dressing room, but as the show's going on, waiting for our bows, and a phone rings. Lance picks it up, goes, hello, and it's Johnny Thompson on the phone, and Lance goes, no, I don't have a lion. Okay, bye, and hangs up. And goes back to folded up stuff on his desk. I go, what was that? He says, "Oh, it's Johnny calling." I said, "What? You just told him you didn't have a lion. What's going on?" I said, "Oh yeah." He said, "Do I have a lion?" And I said, "No." And then he hung up. I said, "That doesn't set off some alarm bells. You're not going to find out that you're going to call back and go, what the heck is going on?" Lance says, we'll find out. And I go, no, call him back right now. So he calls Johnny back, and he goes, oh, no, I don't have a lion. No. And hangs up. And it turns out that there's a guy working in Lance's backyard here in Vegas on a prop. He's painting a prop and walking on the block fence behind Lance's house, walking back and forth, is a mountain lion. And this guy thinks, magicians have lions. I'm sure that's a pet. Just standing out there painting. So, Johnny calls him back and the guy races into the house, and that's the whole story. No one was killed.
At the castle, they had what they call the festal board, which was a German thing. Irene sort of instigated the festal board. So they had a variety of things in mayonnaise. Lots of things in mayonnaise. Weenies in mayonnaise, fruit in mayonnaise. But, they had a big problem with pests back then. And one person's like, taking things off the buffet there. And a rat ran across the top of the thing. And when she goes, "Oh, look at the mechanical rat." Oh, so that was like another bit at the castle, like the same mechanical rat on the food. Yeah. Oh, that's cute.
John, speaking of the castle, I got to see you, but Mr. Misto specifically, an awful lot. I absolutely love that character. And how did you come up? Like, what's the genesis of Mr. Misto?
So I'd never done a silent routine, so I was trying to work up a silent routine so I could, work different venues where language, was a problem. And so I'm doing all these things, the music, and but I don't really have an act. It's like I'm working it out. I'm trying to, and I just take off the hat and I just kind of held it like this, and I did like a funny bow like that. That's all. Well, David Williamson saw me do this, and he goes, "Oh, that's great. I love that character." And I go, "What character? It's no character. I just take a bow." He goes, "No, I love that character." Yes, you be that character, and it's going to be hilarious. And I go, "What are you talking about? I don't have a character. I don't have an act. It's like I can show this thing, but I don't really." So I'm trying to think of what kind of a character he would be, or what, And I tried lots of different voices. At one point, he was going to be like Harry Blackstone. I always laugh 3 times, never 2, never 4. Yeah. If that sounds sincere. So I tried it as him. I tried it different things, and it was a little Dom DeLuise, a little Carl Ballantine. It was just a big mishmash. But I'd never really done the character in front of people before. And so like that day I'm going, is it going to be like this or no? Is he like this? Or what's he going to do? And it's time to do it. And I walk out and, I took improv training. And one of the things was you commit to it, whether it's working or not. You commit to it until you get off stage. When you get off stage, you can curse your head off. But as long as you're on stage, you stay in character. And so he's just a goofy guy that wears his heart on his sleeve and his emotions on his sleeve. And he thinks he should be appreciated more than he is.
The first time I remember seeing him was at a Castle, I think at a Castle Awards banquet.
And Misto was up for an award. He didn't win that year. I think it was Jason Byrne won that year. And I got the information in advance. I think I said, look, if I'm not going to win, maybe I could accept. Jason Byrne couldn't make it. So I called up Jason Byrne. I said, could Misto accept? And so he said, yeah, that'd be fun. And I go, oh, okay, So they announce, the winner is Jason Byrne. Accepting the award for Jason Byrne is Mr. Misto. And
that was a good Mark Nelson impression, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So I'm like wandering around, and then I can't figure out how to get up, and I'm climbing up on the stage. I'm not using the stairs. And then I get over to the microphone, and there's the girl presenter, and I take her and I dip her and I give her a big kiss. And, and then I start saying, well, this kid, I invented all this stuff. Everybody else he's like complaining that he didn't win and everything. And Jason Alexander, from Seinfeld, he was in the audience. And later I heard some people he was sitting with. They go, "Is that guy? Is he really like that? Is that guy really like that?" So I thought it was great that he thought I was a real person, So that's Misto.
I also saw your Fawcett Ross show that you did in LA, and that was freaking phenomenal.
Oh, thanks. I kind of always have had. I was just a smarmy stand-up guy, and I go, I like to be sentimental. I like to be funny. I like a lot of different things. So that was a more of a sentimental thing, and had some laughs in it. But people found it moving, to talk about my affection for this man that was so nice to me and taught me math.
Really charming.
So I kind of stopped doing Misto on a regular basis because, I'd go to the castle and I'm appearing. People say, "When you working?" I go, "Well, I'm working tonight." They go, "Oh, you doing Misto?" And I go, "No." And they go, "Oh." I go, "Hey." But
yeah,
something is Misto, it has to be a very specific type of thing. I mean, one of the things I like about it is that he's completely incompetent. He's a complete idiot, but somehow it works. So everything has to be structured like that. I can't just come out and do any trick. It has to be a trick that's structured in that sort of a way. And it actually, it's more deceptive because they think he's an idiot. Because right. Moving around, they're not suspicious of somebody being smart and clever when you're acting like an idiot. Unless they see me off stage, then they know.
I know you're a fan of ventriloquism
and puppets.
We share an affection for Otto and George and some other stuff, and I believe Nick Diffatte, a good
friend of mine.
Yeah, Nick Diffatte has prepared a little ventriloquist thing, I think.
Sure. So sometimes we like to play games on the show, and today I thought we could play ventriloquism skit from the 1940s or magic trick title. And today we'll be playing for this copy of Marcy Sings on vinyl, a beautiful piece.
Oh, my goodness.
Includes Jesus Loves Me and 14 other songs, including the smash hit Jesus Wants Me for a Sunbeam. Nikki, could we roll the clip? Could we roll the...
Jesus wants me for a sunbeam to shine for him each day. In every way try to please him at home, at school, at play. A sunbeam, Jesus wants me for a sunbeam.
Oh, God. Thank God it's over.
And to think we were having trouble coming up with theme music.
Welcome to hell. So I've got 5 prompts, and the game is to guess whether it is a ventriloquism skit title from the 1940s or a magic trick. And the first prompt for today is Potato Jones. Potato Jones.
Ventriloquist act.
I'm sorry, it's actually a magic trick from the
that's a U.F. Grant trick, right?
It is.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
It's one of the first few tricks in one of the dumbest names for a trick ever. But there is a guy named Potato Jones in it.
I thought I had seen that publicity photo.
The second prompt is D-Day. D-Day. Is that a ventriloquist skit or a magic trick?
Well, it's very topical regardless. So
right?
I hope that's a ventriloquist skit, complete with explosions.
It is. It is a ventriloquist skit about learning the alphabet. True story. The third prompt today is out of shape penetration.
That has to be a 70s ventriloquist act. Has to be.
That is actually a porn title. It is a magic trick from a Carol Fox book. For real. The fourth one, again, out of 5 for Little Marcy on vinyl. School Scuffle.
No, that's got to be ventriloquism. It's ventriloquism.
It is where the ventriloquist figure receives his report card and the grades are straight Z's. The fifth and final prompt is, am I adopted? Am I adopted?
Oh, I hope that's a magic trick, and I hope you have the props for it and can do it right now.
Well, I do have the script with me for the ventriloquist.
Oh my
routine.
God!
We should do it. We should do it on another episode for real. But again, we have all won a copy of Marcy Sings Jesus Loves Me. It's one of those bits.
Wait, so there's a book of scripts that you can use for your ventriloquism?
Oh no, there are many, and I own a lot of them.
When I was a kid, I had the catalog, and I couldn't afford any of the. They were like $100 or $200. Now they're $5,000, $2,000, $3,000. And at one point they said, "Hey, we're having a contest for the best ventriloquism routine." And I go, "Oh man, I'm going to win that money, And so I wrote my own script, and I had my own jokes in between, but I gathered jokes from here and there and joke books, and then I had some jokes of my own, barely jokes. And I submitted it, and I was so happy that it was printed, and they sent, it was just a way to get material, and then they could sell this material.
Right.
But they gave first prize to some kid who copied it exactly out of Paul Winchell's book.
Oh, funny.
Profit, word for word, and the kid won the thing, and it's my introduction to show business.
That's hilarious.
Wow. So I just noticed, John, that you look very much like a priest at the moment today.
Yeah, my sweater. I am divine. I almost became a priest when I was younger. I just go, I don't think I'm good enough. No, I was raised Catholic, and there was always talk of, kids, maybe you want to be a priest when you get older. I go, I don't think I could be good enough. I don't want to be that good,
Well, I, for one, am happy you didn't do that, because you have one of the best Bill and Lemons I have ever seen.
The best.
I recognize that that's funny, but I'm also not kidding.
So Jacob is fond of asking, and I know from hearing these sitting around dinner tables late at night in diners, that you have many stories about horrible gigs. That's like Jacob's favorite thing to hear. And I don't believe he's heard any of yours. And
no.
If you would grace us, Johnny.
But I remember one time I was working in Hermosa Beach at the Comedy Magic Club as a bartender, because they wanted close-up magic, and I didn't have a stage act yet. But they would give me, a couple times a week, they'd say, "Hey, you want to go up for 5 minutes?" And I'd always have my stuff ready. And I was driving home at 2 a.m. or something, and I was already broke. It was like I wasn't making any money there. And I was driving home, not drunk or anything. I want to say that right out. I wasn't intoxicated or anything, but I'm driving home, and it's a long way from Hermosa Beach, where I lived at the time was around Glendale. And I'm just driving on the freeway, and all of a sudden, it was a darkened area, didn't have a lot of lights. There's this big black thing. It's black art. It's black on black in the black. And there's this big engine or something that fell off a truck right in the middle of my lane. And I go, holy crap. And I go, like this, and scrapes up the underside, and it's all screwed up. And I pull over the side of the road, and they towed it to some yard, someplace. And then I got a taxi home. And I go, how am I going to pay for this? And, geez, it was already tough. And now I got to get the car fixed. And I go home, and I flop. When I wake up, there's messages on my machine, and I look, and one of the messages, give me a call about a job. And I go, oh, good, a job. Maybe I can make some money. So the guy said, well, we're having a dinner at the Sheraton up at Universal. And it's like $500 a plate, a fundraiser of some sort. And we don't want people to have to wait while the valets are parking the cars. You know, it'd be so slow parking that we're hiring entertainers to go along the drive. It's a long drive leading up there and into the hotel. Jugglers and unicyclists and everything. And they said, we just want you to go up to the car and do a little trick, and then, and then the car will move on, and you go to the next car, and they're just moving really slowly. And I go, well, I just don't do that sort of thing. I'm an artist. And if they go, do you want the money? Okay, I'll take it. Whenever it was, I show up. And the thing is, they underestimated the efficiency of the valets. So the cars are going, there's no, you can't approach a car. So it's like, what do I do? What do I do? And I'm like banding cards going, but maybe the one that you're talking about, Mac, was I was working the Hyatt Regency in Houston, and the management said, hey, there's a hospitality convention, hotels and meetings, and we want you to work our booth with some magic. I was working the close-up at the cocktail lounge. I go, hey, my first trade show, that'd be fantastic. So I show up at the thing. I'm really nervous. I've never done a trade show before. It's a real small-scale trade show. But I arrive and I go, hey, the magician's here. Larry, where's his hat? I go, what? No, Larry, where's the hat? Oh, there it is. And they brought out it's a turban with a feather and a big, it's like Karnak. Karnak the Magnificent. I go, I don't wear it to get. He said, you're going to wear it. We bought it. You're going to wear it. This thing. I can't get anybody to stop. I'm doing the thimbles. Nobody's stopping. I don't know how to work a crowd. And so I'm, working, trying to get people just walking by me. I go, hey, here's a little trick. And they walk for like 2 seconds and then they walk away. I go, nobody's watching me. I can't get anybody to watch. And somebody says, hey, the monkey's here. Oh, no, the monkey. Hey, bring the monkey in. So they hire a chimpanzee. People have their picture taken with the chimpanzee. And they set it right behind me.
Oh, my God.
So I'm trying to do magic back here. And people are like looking around me going, oh, look at the monkeys going. People having their picture taken with them. I can't get any attention, but the monkey, everybody's stopping to look at the monkey.
Wow. Oh, I'm so happy, Mac.
Yeah, I told you would love those.
Oh, those are so bad. I don't know how to explain to non-performers why that's fun, because we dread stuff like that. But I mean, Goudeau, you say that the purpose of life is to get the best stories.
Yeah, the closer you come to dying, the better the story.
Yeah. And I've started to try and think about that as terrible stuff is happening to me. Like when you're on stage and stuff like that's going on, you go, just get through it. A day later, you won't feel bad, and you get to tell everybody about this for the rest of your life. A million things. I want you to name some of your favorite ventriloquists. One of mine is the one we mentioned, which is Otto and George. As a kid, I was a huge Willie Tyler and Lester fan. Yeah, I still am. But that's one that I didn't get into Otto and George as a child, but I did get into Willie Tyler and Lester as a child. But you should. I feel like that's a variety act that doesn't get talked about a lot, and if you point people to look up some cool stuff.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And I think I mentioned, I'm bragging, a very good friend of mine is Jay Johnson, and I grew up watching Jay Johnson, and it's so nice to be his pal, and he lives just a couple miles from me. See, I guess Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy and Mortimer Snerd, that's the obvious choice, but one of the things that made him so great, it wasn't his technique necessarily, because his lips moved a little bit and he worked on radio for years. But his characterizations, he did great voices, and it was real acting. It wasn't like stiff, like "Hi, how are you? What did you know?" Very stiff. It was very nuanced speaking, and he was always a little bit in motion. He never was completely still. And completely autonomous to Bergen. So Bergen be over here doing this, and Charlie's like doing his own thing over here. And then they talk, and then he's looking at a girl in the front row. But he really brought it to life with really subtle movements. He had great characters, and he had the best writers in the business. And it was really well executed. So,
but that's to me that's
funny and timed right and everything.
Yeah, but that's all the really great ventriloquists to me have that aspect of. I mean, Otto and George. He's a terrible ventriloquist. Otto was.
Yeah.
But he was also great in that it was impossible not to feel like you were watching two different people. Right, yeah. On stage, two different entities. And I think Lord Charles is like that.
He has an extra layer because his ventriloquist doll has a ventriloquist dummy.
Yeah.
And Otto and George were, George was actually attacked a few times by people from the audience because that's right. How separate you got the feeling that they were, that you wouldn't beat up the guy, you would beat up the dummy is just...
a classic story of how real the illusion could be. Terry Rogers, a few times I heard somebody came up and tried to strangle him because he was so insulted. But one of perfect examples is Paul Winchell was rehearsing to go on a live TV show before they taped the shows. They were going on to air live, and so they're rehearsing. And the guy in the sound booth goes, "I'm sorry, Paul, could you do that again? We're not getting when Danny O'Day is talking. We can't hear him." So they do that, and then somebody comes out and adjusts the microphone, and they're checking the wires and they're checking all the dials and the thing, and they just can't figure out why it's happening. And finally, they figured out what was happening. It was a boom mic, and every time he talked, he would like that, and every time the dummy talked. So that's how strong the illusion is in people's minds.
I just remember, seeing Otto and George, and Otto misspeaking, and George saying, "Shut up, you stuttering Geppetto," and just like weeping with laughter. And that's one of the only Otto and George things you can say if you're not Otto and George. You can repeat, but just the greatest.
Yeah, George was so brutally honest about their life. And, it's not a secret. Otto was a drug addict and had a lot of problems in his life. And George exploited that for his own entertainment, it would seem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was, we don't have any gigs. We don't have any gigs because you fucking sold our answering machine so you could buy crack.
That's not a joke.
True.
That's
true.
That's a true story.
Shut up.
And you think the dummy would be Otto?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Otto had a dummy name.
He said, Otto had a big drug problem. You're going, the dummy had a big drug problem? Well, the early ventriloquist, it's called, you get a little educational here. Originally, ventriloquists did not just do a comedy routine. It was like they would put on a play, and this guy would go around and do the different characters, but it wasn't done for laughter. It was done like a play, and you had these different things.
Goudeau, your favorite is Sammy King, right?
Yeah, my favorite ventriloquist is Sammy King. Yeah. He was the genius who thought of covering up the dummy, and the dummy still heckling and talking to him, so that he didn't have to have the doll out and moving. You'd put it away and cover it up, and then go to do something else, and it would talk. They'd have a conversation back and forth. Really beautiful, really nice.
And the dummy doesn't want to be touched by the performer. He can't. Don't touch my feet. Don't touch my feet. It's just the greatest.
And, have you seen Ken Dodd? He has the funniest little dummy. He has a little tiny head and a big hat, and he's wearing this crazy outfit. But he was a comic, and he was real famous.
Yeah, I didn't know Ken Dodd did a ventriloquist routine at all.
Oh, my God. It's so fantastic. He says to the dummy, he says, "Tell me, would you like a big batch of bread with lots of buttery bread? Or would you like a shanty, which is like a drink, I guess, you know? And and the dummy goes, what? And he goes, would you like a big bottle of beer and some buttery bread or a shanty? And the dummy goes, a shanty. And Senior Wentz's was great, going back and forth from character to character. Some would not be in sight to be behind the table or whatever.
Shut your box.
That was fantastic.
I had lunch with Senior Wentz at one point.
Really?
And he spoke, at least in my experience, spoke very little English. There was, we talk about doing the show in a foreign language. I believe he was doing a show in a foreign language. I believe English was not, he was not particularly well spoken in English.
Yeah, he probably did a lot of things phonetically.
Yeah, it was pretty great.
Yeah. John, you got any movie recommendations?
I've seen all the Marx Brothers and W.C. Fields movies like 20 times because they still make me laugh. I love the Coen Brothers. Anything the Coen Brothers do, I can watch those over and over and over. Those are
what's your favorite Coen Brothers?
It's hard to say. I love them all so much. The Lebowski or Fargo, like way up at the top, but Blood Simple. From the first few frames of Blood Simple, I go, I love this movie. I mean, like in the first 2 minutes, I go, I love this movie because it was just they really used the camera, and they have a very unique perspective. It's kind of a macabre humor and a kind of a. It's just really really wonderful. Yeah, it's funny like Miller's Crossing. When that first came out, I go, oh, Coen Brothers movie, and I watched Miller Crossing, and I go. I didn't really like it that much. Now I've seen it like 5 or 6 times, and I go, this is a masterpiece. This is so great. It's so wonderful. Because you find new things every time, and you follow it a little bit better each time, and the characters. And I love Amelie. It's my favorite films of the past 20 years anyway. It's just so creative and so beautiful, just beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful is the right word. That's what comes to mind when I think of that movie too. The word beautiful is just.
I haven't seen it or heard of it. I'm so excited.
Oh, we'll watch it at my house, Jacob, in the back patio.
Tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, tomorrow night. No shit. Well, hey, John, thank you so much for doing this. It's been really fantastic. You're just the ideal guest. So thanks to little John Carney. Thanks to Nikki Sokolsky, Neon Pineapple, Stephen. Tuffy, what's my favorite thing from today's show?
I think was when we discussed the various ways of killing cats. I believe that was the part we loved.
Yeah, that is, yeah. And we're signing off as we do every show with a little wisdom from George Clinton. In his wisdom, he forenotioned the shortcomings of your condition. So we, the clones, were designed. We're going to blow the cobwebs out your mind. See you next week. Howdy, I'm Matt King. Thanks for watching. Don't everybody leave. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell. I think that makes you get notifications. I don't know how this works. Really, subscribe.